my name is Chris Gear. I'm the project director on FlyZero, and I'm just going to talk to you about what FlyZero is doing and why it's here. So we're backed by the UK government, and we're actually part of the Aerospace Technology Institute, and we're bringing together experts from around the UK who have extensive knowledge of aviation. So these experts are coming from Airbus, Rolls-Royce, GKN Aerospace, NATS, Reaction Engines, and others. And we're running a 12-month research program. So why are we doing this? Well, it's really around the carbon challenge for aviation. And it is a massive challenge for aviation. It's probably our single biggest challenge in the sector, opposed to the issue once we recover from COVID-19. So, globally, CO2 emissions from aviation are approximately 885 million tons, and that was in 2018, which is about 2% of global emissions. And last year, a report that accumulated all the emissions from aviation worked out that we were around 3.5% of the warming impact caused by humans to the whole globe. So FlyZero is here to protect the globe and actually work out what it is we need to do to improve our environment in aviation. And as you can see, lots of flights in 2019, 38.3 million, and 4.5 billion people moved. Those are big numbers, clearly not happened this year, but probably will recover by 2024, those sort of numbers. But if you just took a single day and take Heathrow, for example, Heathrow would have used 22 million litres of kerosene every day in 2019. So that's a large volume of CO2 being emitted in the atmosphere. As well as that, if you see contrails coming out the back of an aircraft, that also has an impact on warming effect by about 1.5%. So there's a secondary effect that aviation needs to consider. But the point of FlyZero is, how do we get to zero emissions? And it is a challenging point. And it's why we're here. So what is FlyZero? So it's a challenge, yes, but it also represents an opportunity to bring forward new technologies that deliver both environmental gains and economic returns for the UK. And the market is sized to be around 4 trillion globally by 2050, because aviation is a global market. And our vision is really to realize the zero carbon emission commercial flight by the end of the decade, which is a big challenge. I have a team now of 86 people, and we are assessing not only the technology challenges we face, but also the sustainability issues and the UK industrial capability and the market and economic aspects. So we are looking across a very broad spectrum of issues. And just to give you a feel for the sort of areas we're looking at, we're focused on aircraft that sit between the 500 and 1500 nautical mile range. And that could be a sub-regional 20 passenger aircraft to a 50 passenger aircraft to a 200 passenger aircraft. And we're doing this because this is where we think the main opportunities lie to bring in technologies and different energy sources that will impact CO2 emissions. At the higher levels, there's a big investment in those aircraft already. And really the value there is to switch those aircraft over to some sort of sustainable aviation fuel. But overall, that won't give you zero carbon emissions for the higher level aircraft. But that's probably the best scenario economically, as those aircraft are worked and developed to meet CARI 2050 goals. On the range that we're going to look at, we're doing market studies, and we're going to create roadmaps of not only the technology needed to implement changes on these aircraft, but also the UK industrial landscape, the commercial roadmaps, and the energy system roadmaps, which hydrogen is obviously a key one of those. We will look at the aviation regulations, but we also look at gaps and strengths. So, as I said to you before, we are on a 12-month journey. We're in month 4 at the moment. So all our work is really at the initial phase. We have not defined or decided what are the right solutions, but being in the ATI organization, we're allowed to look independently at all solutions. So that's exactly what we're doing. So we're looking at hydrogen, we're looking at battery, we're looking at fuel cells, we're looking at hybrids, we're looking at burning the hydrogen in gas turbine engines, but we're also looking at using fuel cells and electrolysis and running electric motors. We've even considered ammonia. So we are looking across a wide range of skills or energy sources. If we just take hydrogen on its own, it has benefits for aviation, and it also has some issues for aviation to deal with. So hydrogen is one of the potential fuels for zero carbon emission aviation. It's got no CO2 emissions, which is great. However, it will reduce the NOx, but it will not eliminate NOx out of gas turbine engines. So those are not necessarily going to be zero. It will also produce water in the emission, which will create contrails. And this is something that needs to be dealt with, because obviously those are a challenge, and they can, in their own right, create carbon dioxide problems and heating of the atmosphere. In terms of fuel system volumes, well, the liquid requires around 4 times more volume versus the kerosene that we know today. And the kerosene today is normally carried in the wing. So clearly, we're going to have to create other areas within the airframe to carry those larger volumes. And this is going to reduce the economics of aircraft flight. The other area is if we go to gas, but this requires 8 times the volume. There are also issues around the pressurization and temperature consideration due to boil off. So there are lots of challenges with either of these fuels. And I'm just specifically talking about the vehicle at the moment before we even get to the infrastructure needed to supply that fuel to the vehicle. If we talk about mass, the liquid's about 3 times lighter than kerosene. So that's a good positive point. But the gas side of it, although it's lighter, it has an issue where we need to build in quite substantial tanks that are pressurized to carry the gas, which are going to be heavier. So it has a negative impact on the overall aircraft weight. And then finally, we get down to the infrastructure capability and investment. Both are going to require a tremendous investment at the airports, which today do not have any facilities for hydrogen. And the volumes we're talking about will really drive some massive equipment needed to be installed locally to airports to actually sustain the volume of flights we see on a typical day out of Heathrow. So the investment is going to be large, and it's going to take a lot of time to develop that in the markets that we deal in today in the airport. So from an infrastructure point of view, the challenge is now, and it's going to be how do we actually introduce hydrogen into areas which are today fully kerosene operating. So this is going to be a big challenge for the airports and the aviation world to actually look at. So, and then if I go to my final slide, what is FlyZero about? It's about pushing these limits. It's about developing that next generation aircraft concepts using hydrogen and other zero carbon fuels. And as I said, it's something that we're still working on. I think it was described as a moonshot mission, so we'll be pushing the limits. And I've told my team that we want to actually find where the boundaries are with all of these fuels, so they can clearly see what is the best option for aviation. We'll be considering, again, what hybrid operations and combinations are there, if any, so we can achieve the balance between performance and trade-offs against weight and cost and economics for the aircraft. We're going to need specialist support as this project evolves. We'll be posing specific questions to organizations with expertise, and we'll need their input to make sure that we take account of that when we come up with our final answers in terms of how this will affect the aircraft and the infrastructure. Academia, we're going to be putting research questions to academia to tap into the world's leading knowledge and research capabilities we have here in the UK. And beyond FlyZero, I can't yet say hydrogen is or is not the answer, but I can say this is a major opportunity for UK engineering. FlyZero will help the UK stand at the forefront of sustainable aviation in design, manufacture, technology, and also, very importantly, in the skills needed to allow the UK to perform in this market area. And finally, just to say, we are, as FlyZero, going to be holding a webinar on the 5th of May, which you're more than welcome to join.